Okay. So right now you should see the focus question. So you guys can copy that down. Obviously, if you were not here yesterday, yes, Gentiana. If I'm saying your name wrong, Gentiana, please let me know immediately. But yes, the answer was 1, so good job to you. You could just comment, don't be shy. There's a lot of students and former students that will leave some comments, so that's okay. Sebastian, I think I have you a little bit later today. I don't have you right now. Do you know what time I have you?
Second period?
Yeah, so I think I see you at 9:12.
But don't we have math?
Is it one of those?
Second period 2?
Oh, no, I don't have you second period. I'm sorry. You're 8D7?
No, I'm 8D6.
Oh, I don't see you today. I'll see you on Wednesday.
Oh, okay.
Okay, I'll see you. So sorry about that. So how did the first colonists, is our focus question, how did the first colonists of Jamestown and Plymouth incorporate a republic government? So our first 2 areas where we have colonists come to the New World from Britain were in Jamestown, Virginia, which is a place you would have spent a little bit of time on last year, and Plymouth, Massachusetts. Long story short, they are much different in the geography of where they are. Jamestown is located in the southern colonies. So if you're thinking of the geography of some of the stuff we've been working on, you're thinking of a warmer climate, a lot of farmland. Plymouth is located in the New England colony of Massachusetts, where if you're looking at that, you have more of a situation where there's not as much farmland, it's a lot colder. So we have our 2 first groups of colonists going to 2 much different places of the United States. However, they are the 2 beginnings of our forms of government. So our country starts, yeah, Lizmel, just the focus question. So like Damasi, if something's in black, you probably don't have to write it. So just the focus question on this particular slide. All right, and if you don't get it all down, it's okay. You know I'm recording the lesson anyway. So how did the first colonists of Jamestown and Plymouth incorporate a republic government? Well, let's just kind of get a little bit of perspective on everything. So the British monarchy is a form of government where a monarchy is led by a king or a queen. Britain's had this government for a long time at this point. So many of the people coming over from Great Britain were used to being led by a king. So this king had absolute authority. So if the king told you a situation, he was the king pretty much your entire life unless he passed away. The king made every single decision. It's not like they held an election. If they didn't like the king, they could vote out and put in a new king. That's not how it worked. The king or the queen was the leader of the country for the entire time they were alive. All right. So people's rights and laws had to be approved through the king or queen. Therefore, the king or queen absolute power over the country it rules. The leader of Britain, by the time the first colonists were coming to the United States of Jamestown and Plymouth, was a guy by the name of King James I. For the basketball fans here, there is the Instagram handle of LeBron James, which is King James. That is not the real King James. That's not the one I'm talking about. I'm sure you guys, thank God you're muted because you're probably laughing so incredibly hard because it's such a good joke by me. But if you did not know, the real King James is the guy from Britain, okay, at this point. So he's the leader of Great Britain at this time. And the first colonists left Britain in King James's rule. They came to a place and they decided to call it Jamestown, which makes sense because that was the name of their former king. So you would think naturally they would just hire or appoint a king into the leadership. All right, and the same thing at Plymouth. You think they'd appoint a king to run the country, but that is not what they decided to do. I shouldn't say the country, the colony. They decided to come up with a different type of government. It's almost like they didn't like being ruled by a king, and that's part of the reason why they left. Lizmel, in this case, a king can be in charge as a leader, as 10, 11 years old. But in this case, I don't think King James I was. I think he became in charge in like his 20s. But you can, which is kind of crazy. There can be kings. I can't think of any off the top of my head because I'm not the best world history teacher, but there's been plenty of British kings that were kings as early as the age of like 9 years old, which is kind of crazy. All right, so moving on to the next slide. This is kind of how it looked here. You have a couple of things. So you have the number 1, the number 2, the number 3. Okay, so you're just following along here. The first ever settlement of colonists into the New World was actually at a place called Roanoke Island, which was located kind of close to Virginia, like kind of close to Jamestown. But long story short, it's something that doesn't come up on the Regents often. They came in like the 1500s, and we don't need to know much about them. The first major group we need to know about is in I think it's 07, okay? But it could be a little bit later on. We had the people of Jamestown, people of the British colonies go to a place called Jamestown, Virginia. This is something that in 7th grade you probably spent some time on. One particular thing was that the people of Jamestown thought they were going to a climate very similar to the one in Great Britain, so they thought it was kind of colder. So they brought crops to farm, and when they got there, none of the crops grew because they were in the wrong type of farmland. So a lot of the first settlers passed away. A lot of the first settlers got sick, and a lot of the first settlers got into conflicts with Native Americans. This is the famous story with Pocahontas. This is the famous story, if you know the Disney story a little bit. It's somewhat true. I mean, not fully. But long story short, that's not stuff you need to know for the Regents. What we need to know is how Jamestown decided to govern its colony. Because we're going to take some things from Jamestown that we're going to bring into our country that we still have today, even though it's almost 400-something years ago. All right? And the same thing if you're looking at the 3 years, same thing with Plymouth, Massachusetts. The people came over the Mayflower, which is something you probably remember, the Pilgrims, and that led to things like Thanksgiving. And Thanksgiving is really cool, but that's not something you need to know for an 11th grade U.S. history class. What we're going to look at is the Constitution they came up with in Plymouth, Massachusetts. Okay, so this is the major slide we need to write down. So if you're doing Cornell notes, you could write this at the top. Where do we get this idea of a republic from? Okay, so we kind of talk about it. So what's confusing is, even though the British government itself was a monarchy, there were many republics in Europe starting to develop. It was throughout the age called the Age of Enlightenment, which we're going to look at a little bit later on this week or maybe next week. And this Enlightenment idea basically changed the whole idea that these kings and queens are these divine, God-given power beings, and that actually they should not be running the country. The people should run the country. And it was this new idea kind of going around that what some countries in Europe were starting to do. So when the colonists got to a new world, they decided, let's not rule by king or queen, let's rule in a different way. Let's have the people do it. So when the first colonists arrived in America, they realized they did not have a government. And this is, when you, like, not that anyone would in class, but if you were ever to start a country or a colony, or even if you were to start a business, you need to first come up with a set of rules and a government to make sure that rules and regulations are in place, because it's human nature for people to not, if there's no rules, for people to kind of do their own thing. You need to establish some sort of rules to make sure that people know what the expectation is. This could be in school. This could be if you start a business later on. This could be if you start an entire country. All right? Government needs to be put in place. Rules need to be set. Otherwise, there's going to be some sneaky person somewhere along the line that's going to try and take advantage and ruin everything. All right, and you guys can understand that, right? Every class has a class clown or someone who's disrespectful, and if you let them get too much and we don't hold them to rules, it's going to be anarchy. Okay, so we need to make sure that rules are in place. So we get this idea of a republic where we say, you know what, we don't want a king or a queen to make the decisions. As a colony, as a Jamestown colony, as a Plymouth colony, we want to govern as people equally. All right? So what they come up with, and I have these two words highlighted because they're trigger words. They're usually words that come up when you see these terms like the House of Burgesses and Mayflower Compact, and that is self-government and representative government. So let's first start with self-government. You should pretty much understand what self means. So what does it mean to self-govern? Well, that means the people are the ones making the decisions for the country. All right, this is very similar what you'd see in a democracy, what you see in a republic. It's very similar what you see in our country where we're voting for our representatives to speak on our behalf. We're running the country. In Britain in 1619, let's say, King James is the one running the country, and King James is the one who is running the show. That is more of a not self-government, but absolute government by the leaders in charge. All right. Right now in class, in school, it's not necessarily you guys have a self-government. I'm the one making decisions. I'm the one running the class. You guys are a part of it, but it's not like we all kind of came together and was like, okay, this is how Mr. Panio should teach us this class. All right. I'm the one kind of making the decisions. So it's ironic that me teaching a republic, our country is a republic, but I run my class a little bit more like a king or a queen, which is, I guess, ironic. So that's the form of self-government. In the chat, I know there's only 8 of you here, or 7 of you here, but what is another term for representative government? What is a one-word term that we could use that would say is a representative type government? Let's see. Excellent. Both of you guys got it right. Excellent. Republic. So when I say representative government, I'm talking about a republic. We're going to look at a situation where we're not going to have every single person at the colonies come together. They're not all going to meet and decide on the laws. We're just going to have a couple of them meet and decide the laws, the rules, and come up with the constitution of the country. All right. So specifically, I want to start with Jamestown. Jamestown had a place called the House of Burgesses. I'll show you a photo of it soon. The House of Burgesses was like, you're just going to look at it. It looks like a house. It's nothing special. But this is a house where you had the representatives of Jamestown meet and talk about how the government of Jamestown is going to operate and what the rules would be. Jamestown was a colony which, when it started, had right around 600 or 700 people. If it was a democracy, 700 people would show up to the House of Burgesses and cast their votes. But what you'll see is that wasn't the case. You're looking at maybe 10 to 15 people would meet at the House of Burgesses, and they were the ones that were representatives of the colony, and they're the ones that came up with the rules and laws. And that, my friends, is a republic. That is the first, even though it's the first colony in the United States, it is the foundation of our government system. And it's really an amazing thing. I don't even think the people of the colony even realized what they were doing at the time. They set up literally our entire system of government. So it's really cool. In Plymouth, on the Mayflower, okay, which was a ship that came from Great Britain and came to Plymouth, Massachusetts. On the ship, the new colonists came over and they created a constitution. So I'm just going to go back really quick so you see. A constitution was the nation's plan or overall framework for government. So they're going to write down and sign what the rules and regulations will be in Plymouth. Okay, and then they all signed it, so they all agreed upon some of these things. So in Plymouth, you had the Mayflower Compact, okay, which was a constitution, one of the first constitutions of our country. All right, and the House of Burgesses, which was very similar, if you remember anything from 7th grade, what the House of Representatives would be for us today. They're representatives from our states and our districts, and they meet in the federal government and try and discuss rules and laws and discuss everything that's important to us, okay? Now, we're gonna go over a couple things here, but if you could remember, it really should be this simple. If you could remember, Jamestown and the House of Burgesses and Plymouth and the Mayflower Compact had something to do with establishing a republic or a representative government, or had something to do with developing a self-government. I guarantee you'll get every single question about Jamestown and the House of Burgesses and the Mayflower Compact correct. And we'll do some examples really quickly, but this is kind of the setup of it. So here are just some photos. Okay, on the left is Jamestown, the House of Burgesses. Okay, and on the right's the Mayflower Compact. I'm just going to go through a couple things. This is a present day photo. of the House of Burgesses in Jamestown, Virginia? No, it didn't look like that in 1619, but it was a very similar size and structure. And as you could see here, you don't have all 600 colonists discussing, how to run Jamestown. You're just seeing the representatives. You're just seeing the republic being brought out in front of you. It's all these people sitting. It doesn't look like the most interesting meeting, but the importance of it was establishing how the colonies are going to run. What is the relationship going to be with the Native Americans? How much money do you make if you farm? What is the rules on trade? What do we do if someone commits a crime? I mean, these are really important things, and it was all decided in this room in Jamestown, Virginia, okay, for our first colony. All right, this is the Mayflower Compact. You see it's not overly long, written in 1620. If you're looking here on the right, these are the names that signed it. I just kind of gave the reading here. It's something you have to write down, but if you just kind of look at the what I highlighted, right? Constitute and frame such just and equal laws, ordinances, acts, constitutions from time to time. So they're talking about how the laws they make are going to be just and fair, most meet and convenient for the general good of the colony. You got to make sure that the laws are fair for the colony, unto which we promise all due submission and obedience. They're all basically saying we're going to be obedient. We're going to follow the rules in this colony of Plymouth, Massachusetts. Okay, they're pledging themselves in this Constitution. All right, so with our particular country, we're looking at our first ever Constitution and our first ever Republic, and by the time our country gets going, it's 2020. We still have a Republic, we still have a Constitution we follow. These people, these colonists did something right, and it's really an awesome thing. Okay, and I'm not saying the colonists back then were perfect. They had great relationships with the Native Americans. They didn't. They had their flaws, but the foundations of our government were really an amazing thing. Okay, so very similar to yesterday, all right? Very similar to yesterday. We are going to answer the questions, okay, based off of what we see, and then we'll get to the assignment, okay? Which heading best completes the partial outline below? So what this means is we have 3 topics: the Mayflower Compact, the House of Burgesses, the New England Town Meetings. What is the best title of these headings? All right, so which title is the best that completes these partial outline? So if you get the answer, you could write it down in the chat. Let's see how we do. What would be the best title? Gatiana said C. When you say C, I'm assuming, okay, so let me be clearer with this. So the correct answers will either be 1, 2, 3, or 4. A, B, C, I know it's a little confusing. A, B, C are just the topics that we talked about. So if you were to list 3 topics, what would be the best title for these 3 topics? So it's not going to be A, B, or C. It's going to be 1, 2, 3, or 4. Is it 1, attempts to overthrow British rule? 2, development of self-government in the American colonies. 3, establishment of British parliamentary control over the colonies. 4, social reform movements in the American colonies. Which one do we think is the best answer? Okay, Abigail, which 2 answers are you stuck between? Liz Mel says B, which I assume she means 2. Which 2 answers are you stuck between, Abigail? 2 and 3. Well, those are the 2 good ones to be stuck between. So let's narrow down 2 and 3. Starting with 2. Actually, let's start with 3. The establishment of British parliamentary control over the colonies. Okay, well, in this case, Britain is not really telling people how to control the colonies. When you think about it, people are not choosing to have the king, King James, make decisions for them. They are actually ruling themselves. So I think the answers are starting to come in correctly. The correct answer is 2, the development of self-government in the American colonies. And if you're looking back, right, this is one of our key words, self-government. Those are people operating the government themselves. That's people meeting in the House of Burgesses to come up with their own government. Okay? Let's try this one. The Mayflower Compact and the Virginia House of Burgesses are examples of what? What is the best answer here? 1, opportunities for women during the colonial period. 2, steps towards representative government. 3, economic agreements between the colonists and Native American Indians. 4, limitations placed on colonial Americans by the British government. I see 2 2s, 3 2s, 4 2s. Excellent. You guys are correct. So these are steps towards the representative government, okay? We're looking at how the Constitution of the Mayflower Compact established rules for the people in the country. We're looking at how the Virginia House of Burgesses, you had representatives go, not the entire country, not the king or queen go, just representatives go and speak on behalf of the entire colony. Those are steps towards the representative government. Those are steps towards a republic, okay? So the mini lesson is done. Now we're going to go dive a little bit deeper, specifically to the House of Burgesses. And you'll see something else called the Magna Carta, which occasionally comes up on the Regents. So I'm going to stop sharing this. Okay. I'm going to share this window. This is all new to me. Give me 1 second. If you go to your Google Classroom, which is not that. It's not that. Close. It's not that. All right. Is this. So if you're looking at the Google Classroom, all right, you are going to look at this information reading. Today is a day where you don't have to turn in your notes. So it's just you're going to complete this reading and answer the questions. If you can, it may be a little tough. I suggest just to open with Google Docs. This way it's nice and easy for you to open it. This way it's easy for you to reshare. Okay, and what you're going to get is a reading. Okay, we just saw this photo a bunch, so you kind of get a sense with that. You're going to get a reading on the House of Burgesses, on the Magna Carta, and then you're going to answer the questions on the following page. It's not too long. There's a multiple choice question which you can highlight. There's a couple of true false questions, some pretty basic stuff. If you do the reading, you shouldn't have much of a problem. And this will be how you get a full a grade for today. So right now it's 8:51. It's 9. You have until 9:11 to finish. I don't think there's any reason why you won't be able to finish by the end of the period. And that should be it. So I'm going to, unless there's questions, put myself on mute. I will be here. If you have a question, just write a question in the chat, or you can unmute yourself and we will go over it. All right? So I'll be here.